Hi there. So now we are going to be looking at chapter 1 of your English Hornbill textbook class 11th. This chapter's title is The Portrait of a Lady, written beautifully by Khushwant Singh. When we think about grandparents, naturally there is a charisma, there is an aura, and there is so much to learn from them. This is a tribute that Khushwant Singh has given to his grandmother. And he narrates the story, as a continuous flow of events and how how the relationship altered over a period of time, how it changed, and ultimately how his grandmother passed away in the most uncertain circumstances. But let's start off with a short description of the grandmother that is given in the beginning itself. He says that she's an expanse of pure white serenity. So her face exudes peace and calmness at all points of time. He also says, of course, that she is wrinkled, she has wrinkles on her face, wrinkles on her hand. She's extremely old. She is not at all pretty, but she is beautiful. From within, she's an amazing human being. She'd always be telling the beads on her rosary, and she would be keeping herself busy in that manner. Then the narrator goes on to tell us about the relationship between him and his grandmother. Starting off with when he used to be there with her, stay along with her in the village. And in that village, she used to wake him up early in the morning. They used to do she was a very pious person. So she would always, ask him to recite some prayers, and he would reluctantly recite the prayers along with her. Then he would have a light breakfast, after which they would pack some food and go to a temple. In that temple, the old lady, that is the grandmother, would go and pray, and at the same point of time the priest would teach the narrator and a few other students. And on their way they would also feed the dogs. So she was a very, very kind and helpful lady, the grandmother, and that's what is brought out by these lines. And then came the turning point in their friendship. Friendship it had become because both of them were so close to each other. This turning point came when the narrator's parents called him along with his grandmother to the city. So now the narrator went to a proper school, an English medium school, and even though he used to sleep along with his grandmother only, he would not be going along with her to the school and feeding those dogs on the way. There was a different feeling about that itself. And grandmother wasn't really happy about it. There were two reasons mainly why she was unhappy. The first major reason was that in school, in English medium schools, in cities, they do not teach about God and scriptures. And he used to come, telling about Archimedes' principle, law of gravity, and big English words which she would not at all be able to understand. So she would have loved to teach the narrator something, but unfortunately what was taught at schools was not of her interest. That's number one. Number two, they also taught music at school, and this was something she thoroughly despised. And why did she despise that? Because she felt that music had lewd associations, which means that she felt music was meant only for the beggars and only for those who were poor people on the streets, not for those who are going to proper schools, or not for those who wish to achieve something great in life. Now this you may feel is a regressive statement or something, but it's perfectly fine for an old lady to feel like that, right? So she felt like that, and that's why she felt extremely unhappy. This is what the narrator gauged, but she never actually expressed her unhappiness overtly. She kept it covert, she kept it within herself. Of course it was pretty evident at that point of time. But what did she do to pass her time? At the same point of time when the narrator went to school, she used to feed the sparrows. And this was her favorite pastime. And she was extremely stoic in the fact that she never complained about anything. And she did all her work meticulously. She was a very meticulous lady. Then the narrator went to university, and the common link of friendship was snapped. Why? Because the narrator now had a separate room to live in. He lived separately and studied for a few years in the university, after which he decided to go abroad for pursuing his further studies. And this decision meant that the grandmother had to go and see him off at the airport. This was another emotional movement. Why? Because the narrator felt in 5 years' time, perhaps his grandmother may not survive. So he had that kind of, perhaps a feeling in his heart that this might be the last time I am seeing my grandmother. But before he went and boarded the train, so he caught a train and went to a certain area, after which he would have of course boarded the flight. So in the station, the grandmother kissed him, and that moist imprint was perhaps the last physical touch between both of them. That's what he felt at that point of time, but he was proved completely wrong. Why? Because he came back 5 years later and he saw that his grandmother was there, hale and hearty. Just how she was before, it was like time had frozen. But there was a change, and this change the narrator observed in the evening. When instead of staying in her room or only feeding the sparrows or only reciting her prayers, she had called a whole lot of friends of hers, and she was playing drums, and she was actually singing the homecoming of warriors. Why homecoming? Because the narrator was coming back from abroad. So she was looking a different individual altogether. And the narrator was a little amazed initially, but he knew that she could not strain herself. And his worst fears came true when next morning she fell ill, and and everyone was a little worried. The doctor came and told that she would be alright in a while, but she had an intuition. Grandmother had an intuition that perhaps she may not survive for long, and that is why she was a little skeptical. She continued to tell her beads, and as she was telling her beads, she passed away. And she passed away in a very, very peaceful manner. A peaceful pallor spread on her face, and that is why she had a very, very peaceful death. Now, the last part of the story is very intriguing. Why? Because once she passed away, they had put a red shroud, as is customary, over her body, and after that they found hundreds of sparrows lining lining up around her. The reason? Because she had meticulously been feeding them for over 5 years, over 7 or 8 years in fact, and they were paying tribute to her. And that's a very, very beautiful ending to the story, beautiful climax to the story, because it just shows that when you give something to another living being, you will get respect back in return. And that is why the sparrows giving respect to the grandmother, paying tribute to her, is actually symbolic of how creatures can coexist and can respect each other. So what's the great moral of this story? There's so many morals that you can derive from this story, but I feel the greatest one is to learn as much as you can from your grandparents, right? To learn as much as you can from the senior people at your home and even around you, because you might feel that they are archaic, or you might feel that they have a very, very ancient way of thinking. But no, they are experienced. They have lots and lots of stories to tell. Give an ear to them, lend an ear to them, and you'll find out that you will learn lots in that process. That's number one. Number two, of course, the more you give, you will perhaps may not get that much as you have given, but you will get love and respect, which counts for far more than any material benefits, as we saw with the grandmother. So I hope that this explanation was fine, and I hope that you understood the chapter better. Sorry for not being able to put videos over the last couple of months. Was pretty busy with my studies, but I promise to be a little more regular from now onwards. Do like, share, subscribe, and do tell me how you like this video in the comment section.